Hello, my name is Yecheskel Bund. Thank you for coming to this lecture about DNA and genetic genealogy from the International Institute of Genealogical Studies. If you'd like to learn more about the Institute, please visit us at genealogicalstudies.com. Tonight's lecture is about what else can I do with my DNA? Its additional websites, tools, results, and information. So the goal of the presentation is to share websites that give you additional tools to analyze your DNA and obtain additional results and information. Now, this talk is not an endorsement of any particular site or resource. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Now, something very important to take into account before you upload your DNA to any website, carefully check the privacy and other terms and conditions on the site. I break it down to 5 questions, the big 5. Who? Who are the owners of the site? Who will have access to your DNA? What? What will they do with your DNA? When? Can you remove your DNA from the site at any time? How long will it be stored at the site? Where? Where is it stored? Where is the site located? Because there's different privacy regulations in different parts of the world. Why? What is the purpose of the site and what are their activities? Is it research? Is it commercial? And remember, DNA results can have surprises. Don't look for anything that you might not want to find out. Okay, so first step is you have to download your raw DNA file from the original testing company where you tested. And some of the sites I'm going to show you only work with the DNA from certain companies. For example, some might work with an Ancestry file, some may work with a 23andMe file. So before you upload to a site, make sure that it's compatible with the DNA file that you have. Now, different companies have different directions about how to download the DNA. For example, you can go to Google and Google Ancestry, download DNA, and it'll give you directions on how to download from Ancestry. So that's usually the quickest way to do it. Google, put in the company and how to download the DNA. Save your DNA file to a secure place on your computer or external storage. Now, I guess the first question you need to ask yourself is, am I at all the major direct-to-consumer testing companies? Because you have to remember the different companies like Ancestry, MyHeritage, FTDNA, Living DNA, 23andMe are all separate. So if you test with one company, you don't necessarily have your results at the other companies. But making sure your results are at as many companies as possible is good because the more companies, the more matches you have, the more relatives you can find, the different tools they have at different companies, the different ethnicity admixtures, and some companies test xDNA, for example, 23andMe and FTDNA do test xDNA, but some of the other companies don't. Now, Ancestry and 23andMe do not accept uploads from other companies. MyHeritage does accept uploads from other companies. It's free. You can you can see your matches in the database for free. Now, for an additional $29, you can get access to the chromosome browser, an ethnicity estimate, but once or twice a year, they have an offer where you can upload your DNA and get free tools for life. So that's something to keep an eye out for. FTDNA, you can upload your matches for free, but for an additional $19, then you get an ethnicity estimate, ancient origins for your ancient European origins, and access to the chromosome browser. Living DNA is very similar. You can upload your matches for free, get into the matching database for free, but There's additional services if you'd like to upgrade to find out how much Viking DNA you have, which traits you have, use the chromosome browser, you have to pay additional fees. Now, it's often said since Ancestry has the largest database and they don't take DNA uploads from other companies, it's often a good thing to test at Ancestry and then transfer to the companies that do. The same with 23andMe. Now, if you're looking for information about DNA, maybe terms, things you don't understand, different tools, you can go to the International Society of Genetic Genealogy's wiki. And there they have a tremendous amount of useful information about DNA. They have tools. They also have references to tools, and they also have listings of different DNA projects, which are usually at FTDNA, 23andMe, where people who share a surname or share a certain location pool their DNA to work together. And at the ISOGG wiki site, you can find a list of DNA projects. You can get in touch with the project administrators, and they're often a very useful source of help. Now, if you haven't tested your Y DNA, and remember, Y DNA is the kind of DNA that only males have that passes from father to son, basically since the beginning of time. Now, FTDNA does separate Y DNA testing. 23andMe, you can get a very, very basic Y DNA test when you do test your autosomal DNA. But if you have not tested at either of those companies, and you like to get a Y DNA haplogroup test, you can upload your DNA to this site, Morley DNA. If it's 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and MyHeritage, it doesn't work with FTD DNA. Now, what you get is a very, very basic Y DNA haplogroup, but it is enough for a very basic Y DNA comparison between two men. If you're trying to figure out if two men are related on the direct paternal line, it is often enough. If you believe that you're a direct male descendant, for example, of a king, and I'll show you a site later where you can find out a king's haplogroup, then it's a way to see if you are or not an ancestor of this person. So it is a very good site, and it also can give you enough information to find out if you want to test further your Y DNA at FTDNA. If you haven't tested your mtDNA, now mtDNA is the kind of DNA that a mother passes to her sons and daughters, but it only goes down the female lines. You can upload your test file from 23andMe or FTDNA, and it is a site called jamesslick.com. Now, you get very basic results. It'll give you which mtDNA haplogroups you share the most mutations with, and from that, you could do further research, or you could test an FTDNA to do your mtDNA. Now, if you'd like to learn more about your Y and mtDNA haplotypes, a wonderful site is academia.edu. You can type into the search engine your haplotype. For example, I typed in R1BA, which is the most common haplotype of males in Europe. I believe half of men in Europe share the same ancestor 500,000 years ago. And it gives you different research that often peer reviewed that different researchers have done about the different haplotypes. And you can often contact the researchers via the site, and they're very happy to discuss additional information with you. Now, another wonderful site to learn about your haplogroups and your DNA, if you have European DNA, is Upedia. Now, Upedia has, for example, articles about the genetic history of Britain and Ireland. It's a population genetic site, so it talks about Paleolithic to Iron Age Y DNA and mtDNA studies. They also have wonderful discussion boards about genetics and different things in human history. And also they have wonderful articles about different Y haplogroups and things like that, which is a wonderful site. Now, also what they have is they have listings of SNPs and how they connect to certain diseases. An SNP, also called a SNP, is a genetic variation among people. It's a place on your nucleotide that there's a certain code. For example, if it's C instead of T, an A instead of a G. So what happens is it's that difference at that place, which is used, for example, to show other people who have that mutation to see if you match who could be related. And also, it is connected sometimes with certain diseases, and there's listings at Wikipedia. Now, first of all, any information you get from a site, talk over with your doctor or medical geneticist. And just because you may have a SNP that's identified with a certain disease may not be significant, because as you will find out, and I'll show you in a little while, these connections are based on research studies. Now, research studies, sometimes there could be another study which contradicts the study, or the study may have been done on a genetic population that you're not part of, or a region that you're not part of, and it may not be as efficacious for you. And also, there's all kinds of things. Well, you may have the longevity gene, the genes that are associated with longevity. Lifestyle affects how long you're going to live. The old nature versus nurture debate when we talk about genetics. And also there's the science of epigenetics, which how we live and the things we experience affect our DNA. They change our DNA, and this is also passed down from our ancestors. So it's very important when you're looking at traits, when you're looking at health results from DNA, to take all this into consideration and again, consult with an expert. Okay, if you really would like to learn more about traits and how your DNA, certain SNPs are affected with certain medical conditions, there's a website called Prometheus. Prometheus is now owned by MyHeritage. It calls itself a literature retrieval system. What that does, it takes any time when you upload your DNA to Prometheus, anytime any of your SNPs have been mentioned in a research study, it makes a full report. And you can get the report from Prometheus. It's $12. It's produced usually in under 10 minutes. Now, and you could see, and this is an example from their site, if you have the SNP for male pattern baldness, it also gives you more information about certain haplogroups. Now, this SNP, for example, if you have it, it shows that you have in studies that you have a lower dementia risk. So the news isn't always bad. Now, something else you can do is called the imputation of your DNA. What that means is most of the direct-to-consumer testing companies, when they test your DNA, they test 0.01 to 0.02% of your genome. So what imputation does, it figures out the rest. For example, we all can see that this word is mailbox. What is missing? The B. So it does a very, very similar thing. In plain English, it fills in the rest of the letters of your DNA. Now, you have to remember when you impute your DNA, it is basically a guesstimate. It's an estimation. So you can impute your DNA. One second. I want to show you a free site where you can impute. Okay. So you can impute your DNA at this site. It's called Beagle. And you upload your DNA from unimputed DNA from one of the companies, and then you download your imputed DNA file. Just bear in mind, it's a very large file. So you have to make sure you have enough room on your hard drive or wherever you're downloading it to. And then you can take your imputed DNA, upload it to Prometheus, and get a report based on your whole DNA. Now, a lovely article about this, imputing your DNA and uploading to Prometheus, is on Roberta Estes' wonderful blog, DNA Explained. Okay. Another site which you can do this is you upload your unimputed DNA, it imputes your DNA for you, and it gives you a full report of traits and SNPs associated with different diseases. It's at a site called geneticgenies.org. And if you want to look into your SNPs, little bit deeper, let's say you found a SNP that causes a disease or a trait, you can go to this website called SNPpedia, and it gives you a lot more in-depth information about SNPs. For example, if you look at the RS5848, which was the SNP we found earlier, which in fact was the one that caused a lower risk of dementia. As you can see in SNPpedia, it gives you a tremendous amount of information about just that SNP, what diseases it's been associated with. It talks about, for example, Parkinson's disease in the Taiwanese population, levels of granulin in Alzheimer's disease patients. It talks about, where you can get more information from the different sites where you could learn about SNPs. So it's very, very useful. And it also shows what happens with the different DNA markers at that SNP. So that is a very, very useful site to learn more when you're trying to find out about a certain SNP. Now, another thing that you can do with SNPs, it's go to a site called Scaled Innovation. The name of the site is Tracking Back. And this is another site to explore SNPs of your Y-DNA and your mtDNA. And what it does, it shows you the path of this that the SNPs, the SNPs, took. Now, this is the SNPs from a male Y haplogroup, I2A, R1BA Irish, and it shows you where the SNPs emerged, and it's kind of the path that the SNP took in history. So when you have your Y DNA or it also does your mtDNA, you could see the migration path of your deepest ancestry. Now, another thing that site has, which is very interesting, it's called the SNP Tree Explorer. It takes the Y and mtDNA trees from ftDNA by SNP, and showing a surname or a clan group, and you could kind of identify it. For example, this is called from the site, the American Colonial Starburst, and you could see it connects the different SNPs to the family names that have been connected with it. And this is the time of American colonial times. It shows where they originated prior to the United States. And it also shows the different surnames that are connected. So this is something on the site, and you could build similar for your own family or clan. Now, if you're interested in ATA-DNA, which is ancient DNA, to direct-to-consumer companies that could give you more information. For example, are you descended from the Vikings? How much Viking DNA you have is called My True Ancestry and Genome Link, and they both have very free plans, limited free plans. Now, another great site is called Borland Genetics. Borland Genetics is a little bit different than some of the other sites because you upload your autosomal DNA test from any of the companies, but it has tools and methods on the site based on different relatives' kits where you can recreate an earlier ancestor who lived long ago. For example, you could recreate, if you have the right family kits, your great grandparents. And then when you upload your DNA, you not only match the current people in the database, you also match the people they recreated. Now, some really wonderful genetic genealogy blogs are Dana Leeds, and Dana Leeds has been talking about AI in genealogy, which is something, using AI to understand your DNA results better, which is something very much cutting edge and important. Kitty Cooper also has a wonderful blog. As I mentioned earlier, Roberta Estes, DNAexplained.com is a wonderful blog. Jim Bartlett has a wonderful blog, segmentology.org. And Blaine Bettinger has a blog, thegeneticgenealogist.com. And he is also very involved in artificial intelligence. So at his site, he has some very interesting resources about DNA and artificial intelligence. One other site that I do want to show you is at Genetic Genie, the site that I mentioned to you earlier. They have a chart which shows the different raw DNA files from the different companies. And it shows you the pros and cons of each. For example, 23andMe has the most mtDNA SNPs. So if you're uploading DNA to a site where I showed you earlier, James Slick, where you want to see mtDNA, then uploading to James Slick is with 23andMe, if you have from various companies, is the best way to go. Now, Ancestry, for example, has the most X SNPs, but the less mtDNA SNPs. So it takes a little bit of time to check out the chart, but if you're going to be uploading your DNA to different sites and you have tested a different company, you can use this chart to figure out which sites, which samples, which of your raw data files are the best to connect together. Thank you very much and have fun with your DNA.